Hi, it's TK with the weekly words of encouragement. For our next installment of the Women of the Bible series, we will discuss the stories of Sarah and Hagar. We're introduced to these women in the book of Genesis. Sarah was the wife of the Israelite patriarch Abraham. Hagar was an enslaved woman from Egypt, and Sarah was her mistress. Their stories overlapped because of impatience and lack of faith in God. Let me explain. We learn in Genesis chapter 11, verse 30, that Sarah was unable to become pregnant and had no children. In this cultural context, your value as a woman was viewed through the lens of childbearing. If you were unable to give your husband children, then you were seen as inferior or less than. This is the same reason Hannah was so distraught about not having children. And we will see this theme come up again in our series with Rachel and Leah. Anyway, here's what's interesting about Sarah's infertility. God made a promise to Abraham that he, God, would make him, Abraham, into a great nation, and that Abraham would have a son of his own to be his heir. God made a promise of a son, but fulfillment of that promise didn't happen immediately. And here's where impatience and lack of faith enter the picture. Genesis chapter 16 tells us that Sarah took matters into her own hands. She chose not to wait on God for the promised child. She tried to control the outcome, which reflected her lack of trust in God. Sarah decided to handle her infertility on her own terms. Now, she was around 75 years old at this time, well past childbearing age, so she was likely desperate. She had not been able to bear children for Abraham up to this point, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. Sarah told Abraham, "The Lord has prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her." So not only was Sarah impatient, but she also involved Hagar in a scheme to fulfill God's promise on her own. Now, in this cultural context, it was custom for a servant to act as a surrogate when her mistress was unable to have children. So Hagar was a surrogate for Sarah, giving Abraham a child on Sarah's behalf. Again, we will see this happen with Rachel and Leah. But here's the thing, God had already promised to make Abraham into a great nation with many descendants. But Sarah didn't want to wait for God's timing. Her impatience caused pain to Hagar. And truth be told, she caused herself pain because she resented Hagar's pregnancy. And keep in mind, Hagar had no say in this situation. She didn't have a voice in the matter. As a servant and as an enslaved woman, she didn't have agency to reject Sarah's proposal. She had no choice but to comply. Now Hagar, who was likely younger and of childbearing age, got pregnant with Abraham's child, and the problems only intensified as a result. Hagar viewed Sarah as insignificant and treated Sarah with contempt. Hagar had what Sarah didn't have, a child. And that child likely offered Hagar a sense of security and a place in a world that offered her very little as an enslaved woman. Sarah's plan blew up in her face. But get this, she didn't take any personal responsibility. Instead, she blamed Abraham. She told him, "This is all your fault. I put my servant into your arms, but now that she's pregnant, she treats me with contempt. The Lord will show who's wrong, you or me." The whole scheme was Sarah's idea, yet she shifted blame to Abraham instead of taking responsibility for her decision. Sounds like Eve, right? So, now that Hagar was pregnant, the tension between the two women was palpable. Hagar treated Sarah as if she was insignificant, and Sarah treated Hagar so harshly that Hagar ran away. Now, though Hagar ran away from Sarah, she couldn't run away from God. An angel of the Lord found Hagar and told her to return to Sarah and submit to Sarah's authority. The angel told Hagar she would give birth to a son, Ishmael. It's in this interaction that Hagar referred to God as El Roy, which means the God who sees me. Despite being an enslaved person, one who was vulnerable and had no rights, God saw Hagar. Her creator didn't ignore her. And Hagar did become a mother of many nations through her son, Ishmael. But God hadn't forgotten about Sarah either. God told Abraham that Sarah would bear him a son and that she would also be the mother of many nations. And at the age of 90, Sarah gave birth to Isaac, just as God promised. Nothing is impossible with God. And even after all her scheming, God still kept his promise to Abraham and Sarah. Isaac, the promised son, is one of the Israelite patriarchs, and our Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth, is in his lineage. The stories of Sarah and Hagar are like soap operas, so much drama, yet they both were mothers of many nations. And their stories also offer us a chance to reflect on our own lives. How often have we behaved like Sarah, refusing to wait and trust God? How often have we run away from our problems, like Hagar? Something to ponder. We can learn from Sarah and Hagar's stories to 1, trust God to keep his word, and 2, trust his timing. Amen. I pray you were blessed by this devotional, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.